Okay, we're going live.
Okay, terrific. Hello, if you're seeing us on Facebook Live, this is a setup for tonight's performance of Jenny, tonight 8:20. So join us at 8:20 right here on Facebook Live. Can we do a sound check?
Sure.
Okay, test, test, test.
Sounds good.
All right. Test, test,
Sounds good.
test, test.
Sounds good.
All right, great.
I hear tap tap.
Okay. Good. That's great.
Tap tap.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, whoops, I think we can go to lobby card and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Great. So can you look at my lighting, tell me if it's good?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. And invisible up here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, good. So I think we're all set. Thank you, and I'll check back in at 7:10.
7:10. See you then.
Thank you. If you're seeing us, we're on Facebook Live tonight, 8:20. Check back for the performance of Jenny. Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Hey there.
Hey. So we're going to start recording and just want to do another sound check. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay. Test, test.
Sounds right.
Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. And then let's do the old, what is this? Okay, audio.
Tap, tap.
Right.
Tap, tap.
Great. Okay, great. So I see we're on Facebook Live and we're recording. So join us at 8:20 tonight for Jenny. This is just a setup. Okay, thanks, Joe. Bye.
See you later. Talk later. No, text later.
Yeah, I'll check in before around 8.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
thank you. Hey, Joe.
Hey there.
Hey there. I just want to check in on the sound. So,
Okay.
okay, let me just, there we go. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay. Test, test.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. And let's just do this. Da, 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 da.
Tap tap's good.
Okay. Good.
Not hearing it now.
Okay. Test, test, test. Test, test, test.
Try one more time.
You hear my voice?
I hear your voice. Yeah. I hear the tap.
Okay, thank you. Let's just do that. Okay, good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this evening. We'll be starting in just a minute with Jenny. And thank you for being here. Yay! I was dancing in the middle of a huge circle. I was surrounded by people. It was at the Design Center in San Francisco. Woo! And I realized, even as I was so ecstatic in the middle of that huge circle, that this would probably be my last night with Jenny. I mean, we had a whole nother show coming up. I knew that. And there'll be plenty of other times that we would hang out and we would see each other occasionally, very occasionally over the years. But that night was my senior ball in high school. And Jenny was my date. And somehow, miraculously, we were dancing at the huge center of a gigantic group of people. Woo! And all of them, woo! All of them were cheering for us. Ah! Woo! It was my senior ball and Jenny was my date. Woo! 4 years earlier, I was a little 13-year-old growing up with my brother. And I was finally off to high school. Now, the problem is my brother was a genius. I know that word gets thrown around a lot, you know, genius. And who am I to use the word genius, right? I mean, what am I, Albert Einstein, the Nobel Prize Committee? What do I know, genius? But he really was. When he was in grammar school, he was taking high school classes. When he was in high school, he was taking college classes. When he was in college, graduate school classes. I think it was like running labs when he got to college. He was really, really smart. Now, the problem was, I wasn't at all like him. I was just this little kid, you know, just like this boring little kid. And that worried my parents because they thought that I should be a genius too, right? So they weren't that concerned though. I mean, the thing was that, well, frankly, I wasn't a big problem, right? I mean, I was a very obedient kid. I didn't do drugs. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I wasn't a criminal. I didn't hang out with the wrong crowd. I was just sort of quiet. I seemed happy, and they just took me as happy. And you know, that's not a bad parental principle, right? If a kid seems happy, just treat him like happy, huh? But I wasn't a genius like my brother. My brother had his ticket in life. That was his smarts. He was an intellectual. He was independent. That was going to get him through life. And they weren't that confident about me because they just didn't know about me. So they made a big mistake. They turned my older brother into my mentor. He was the worst mentor of all time. He was terrible. The problem with him was he thought everybody in the world fell into two categories. His category, smart, a very small minority, and the rest of the world, stupid. That was like the vast majority. Like my little brother and my parents, they were all stupid. Now, the problem he had with me was I didn't fall into either category. I mean, I obviously wasn't smart like him. He was like a genius, right? But every time he tried one of his smart ass remarks on me, I came back with something even better. Sometimes I didn't even understand what I was talking about. So that just made me weird. And then he wanted to get revenge. He was like an abusive mentor, but not to a purpose, just, you know, to be mean. I used to do my homework and take it in for him to look at, right? He wouldn't even look at it. He put it to the side and sit there. And I had to wait, one time half an hour while he sat there not looking at it. What a weirdo. So that was a complete disaster. My dad stepped in and he decided that I would take a summer school class in algebra at my high school. That get me introduced to high school and he'd get me ahead in algebra. And the great thing about that was my high school, my new school was 3 miles away. I'd have to ride my bike. That gave me lots of alone time, right? On my bike. And I could imagine that I was on the Millennium Falcon, right? In Star Wars. Or I was in a tank fighting at the Battle of the Bulge. It was great, even more alone time. Problem was I always arrived everywhere really hot, so sweaty. It was hot in my town, but I loved being on the bike because it got me away from people, away from cars, away from everything, and I could escape. I didn't do so good when I got to school though, because I just wasn't a genius. I wasn't even like good. I couldn't even do algebra. I got off to a really bad start. The algebra teacher that summer's name was Fisher. And the first day, to be kind of friendly, he said, "Oh, we have a Fisher in here. Well, you're already in trouble, right?" And I went, I mean, what a bad way to start a summer. That sucked. But I got through it somehow. I never figured out what the X was. It always kept moving around. I couldn't keep up with the X. Then the regular school started. And my brother was assigned now to drive me to school every morning because he was driving one of the family cars. You know what he said? He said he had a 7 a.m. class. And so we had to be there an hour before school started. What? That meant I had to get up at like 5:30 so we could leave at 6:30 so we wouldn't be late. And it was complete nonsense. He didn't have a 7 a.m. class. He would go into the lab with the other physics eggheads, right? And they would just like eat donuts and giggle and fool around. It was so dumb. But I didn't mind my high school. I've been there all summer. It didn't scare me. I sat on the floor in front of my locker and I read books. Mostly I looked at the pictures and I waited for school to start at 8. My college counselor, the one who was advising me on getting into college, she told me I should have some extracurricular activities, So I didn't know what to do. So I went to the film club. Boy, that was weird. All you did was like sit in the dark and watch films. It was completely strange. It was weird, and I couldn't see how it enhanced my college application. Then she told me I also had to take an elective. I didn't know what to take, but I decided to do drama because I'd done some plays in junior high, and I really kind of enjoyed myself when I was in front of an audience. Our first assignment was that great speech from Hamlet. Speak the speech, I pray you. We're all supposed to stand up on the stage in this huge theater. It sat 200 people. It was gigantic. And we had to do this speech. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. For if you mouth it, as many of your players shall do, I had as lief the tongue crier spoke my lines. Of course, that's not how I did it. I did it like this. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you. And the teacher went, louder, trippingly on the tongue. Lift your head up, for if you mouth it, as many of your players shall do. I was so shy. I was so needy. Nobody even really knew. They just thought I was quiet, that they could bring me out of myself. And worse than that, I was beginning to think it was okay to be that shy. Like I just sort of drift through life. Hopefully nobody would notice me. That was my attitude. I was dressed in clothes that would sort of disappear into the background, right? But something changed. In the spring, 2 things happened. My friend Paul came back from Washington, D.C. He'd been my best friend up until 3rd grade. And then his family moved to Washington, D.C. because his dad was in the FBI. How cool is that? And then he came back and stayed with me for 3 days. We hadn't seen each other since 3rd grade. Now it was 9th grade. It was amazing because we were exactly the same. We developed on different sides of the country, exactly the same. We were into war and Star Wars and models. We went up to Phoenix Lake and ran all around the lake. We went into the city on a bus and went to the big hobby store and bought little models of tanks. We stayed up all night talking. It was wonderful. It reminded me that even I fit in somewhere and that one day Paul and I would be in the same city and we'd be best friends again. And the other thing that happened that spring was spring. Oh, it was my first spring. I didn't even know what spring was until then. It filled my body. I felt like I belonged to everything, to every other thing in the world. And, I know it was adolescence and pubescence and, all those essence things. I know that, but I just felt like I belonged and I didn't care what the reason was. And it wasn't sexual. It wasn't like, there was like, of course, there was like sexual awakening. Yeah, I take my clothes off and I run around in the woods naked. Okay, yes, that was part of it. But it was mostly like just this great feeling of belonging. But the weird thing is that I just felt like I belonged to me. I didn't need anybody else. I would just be on my own the rest of my life. It'd be wonderful. It was fine. And so that summer of my 14th year, I entered it, blissfully isolated. And a part of me thought, maybe this isn't right, but who cares? I'd found my center. I could exist on my own. The new school year started and my brother went off to college. Thank God. I mean, wow, what a weirdo. That big brain of his, it filled our house. There was no room for any other personalities except his, right? And then he left. And suddenly I could be me, and my little brother could be him, and my parents could be my parents. 4 separate personalities. And we barely ever talked to each other. So it was perfect in this big old house. And we all existed together without ever acknowledging each other. And because he was gone, I didn't have a ride to school, which is actually great because I was back on my bike, which meant more adventures. Yes, I was a Jedi Knight about to blow up the Death Star. Every morning on the way to school. I always arrived exhausted, but that's okay. It was exercise. I was good. And that was the beginning of my sophomore year, that I discovered the library. I realized I could disappear into the library. I'd go in there at lunchtime, any period I had off, even on little 20-minute breaks, sometimes between classes. I'd go in and sit in the library. There's a table way back in the stacks in a section that I really liked, which had history books. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bookhead. I wasn't reading like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky or anything like that. I was just looking at pictures and books. That was enough for me. And I settled. I settled into my own little world. And then Jenny happened. Jenny was like a miracle. I don't know where she came from. I mean, I do know where she came from. Of course I knew where she came from, but she just blasted into my life and changed everything. She was in my drama class, and I never noticed her. I mean, I was just too wrapped up in my own thing. I was just totally isolated, even in classes. And one day she came racing into the library and she found me at my table and she said, "John, I have an idea. They're going to have a drama festival and they're looking for scenes. They want 2 actor scenes. And I thought that you and I could do a scene. Would you like to do a scene with me, John?" I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, who was I? Robert Redford? I was acting so difficult. I mean, what other offers was I getting? Yeah, I'm just not sure. Well, I have a scene for you to read, John. It's in this book, right? Just read the first scene. It'd be really good for us. You can play the man, I play the woman, okay? Read it, tell me what you think. It was some stupid book, a play called Androcles and the Lion by George Bernard Shaw. So I started reading it. How dumb. Ugh, it was like this fable. It was like this couple, Androcles and his wife Megara, in ancient Rome, and they were fleeing the Romans because they were Christians, right? And they had this big argument, and then this lion came on at the end and tried to eat them. It was so stupid. And the lion had like a thorn in its paw, and Androcles pulls the thorn out of his paw, and then he and the lion dance. I thought it was so childish. I was so insulted that she thought I should do that. I didn't even talk to her. I just sat there in the library. I was annoyed. She came in another day and she said, "Did you read the play?" "Yeah, I read it." "What'd you think?" I thought it was really stupid, It's just like this couple, they argue, and then this lion comes and like tries to eat them, and then he pulls the thorn out of him and he dances with the lion. It just gets so stupid. I hated it. Oh, okay. Well, what would you like to do instead, John? Now, you see, there's a rhetorical moment going on here, right? Because she's taken me from, do you want to do it, to what are we going to do instead, right? She was very clever that way. And I didn't have a response. So I thought, well, there's this book. I really like this book. This is my favorite book. The Thurber Carnival by James Thurber. Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah, I'd like to do that. You want to do this whole book, John? No, just the first story. I think that'd be good for us to do. She said, okay, I'll read that. And she sat there and read it. She read the whole story right there in front of me. It was called The Woman on 147. And she just read it in front of me. I mean, this was like a 6-page story. That took me like a week to read. She just read it and she said, okay, I read it. I said, yeah, that's a good story. And she said, John, it's not a play. It's not a play. This isn't a play. I said, well, what difference does it make? I mean, it's got 2 characters in it, a guy and a woman, so we can do that. John, it's got a big difference because it's not just those 2 characters. There's like 15 other people in this, John. How are we going to find 15 other people? It's supposed to be a 2-person scene. And they all come in, they say one line. We can't do this. It's not a play. Well, Androcles and the Lion has a lion in it. I mean, that's stupid. Where are we going to find a lion? I mean, what are you going to do? Like have a kitty cat? Like, meow, meow. It's like stupid. It's like we need like an MGM lion. It's stupid. That's stuff. John, what are we going to do? We have to decide right now. They want submissions. You see, another rhetorical leap. It's no longer, what are we going to do? It's like, we have to decide right now. She was so clever with me. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to do that weird thing with the lion. Okay, John, what do you like about the woman on 147? What do you like about that James Thurber story? I think it's funny, you know. It's about this married couple who are arguing, and my parents are always arguing, and I think that's funny. John, Androcles and the Lion is about a married couple arguing. It's the exact same story. All we have to do is argue. It's the same thing, except it's a play. John, think about it. And she kind of overwhelmed me. She was like that. She was like a tsunami. She just... And I thought, well, why not? But you know what I really think I wanted to do? I wanted to wear a toga on stage. Now remember, this was the year of Animal House. And togas were huge because of that movie. Toga, toga, toga. So that night I went home and I designed my own toga for Androcles and the Lion. I was so excited, but I was very specific about the design of the toga. It had to be very specific because, of course, I didn't want to show any of my body. My body was totally underdeveloped. I had nothing to show, so I had to figure out how to bury everything. Now, it's something that people don't remember, but you know, you have to have really good tits to wear a toga. John Belushi had huge tits. That's why he succeeded in a toga, right? So I came up with this toga design, which was like totally trying to hide my nipples, you know, because I didn't want my nipples on stage and I had no chest. My body was like concave, not like John Belushi's big breasts with nice red nipples. And you know, it's like those old movies like Spartacus with Kirk Douglas and Laurence Olivier. They both have those big, you know, tits, and they're all like, look at my big tit, look at my big gym tit. Yeah, okay, look at my big, yeah, suck it, suck my big gym tit, suck it. I was like, I didn't like that. I wasn't gonna do that. So I designed my own toga, and we went into rehearsal. And Jenny was like kind of like our director as well. I mean, she was really on top of it, right? And she was always like, John, you've got to be louder. Nobody can hear you. John, it's an argument. Argue with me. John, would you look at me? Come on, John, come on. And she was really good at directing. It was kind of fun. And we also got a lion. This really good girl. She was like a senior and she drew like whiskers on her face and she went, rah, rah. I thought it was kind of stupid, but she was really good at it. If you had to have a lion, she was the best. And on opening night, I was completely unafraid. Yeah, I just went out there. It's hard to believe. Unafraid? It's like horrifying now. But then I didn't know better. And I went out on stage and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. They loved us arguing. They loved the togas. Toga, toga, toga. Oh, they adored the lion. The lion was a huge hit and they loved it. At the end, when I pulled the thorn out of the lion's paw, rah, rah, and then me and the lion danced. Da 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 rah rah da 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 da. It was such a big hit. Everybody adored it. It was like the definition of taste. I was so impressed with Jenny. She found a fable. She knew that there had to be like animals in it because people love animals on stage. And we had to really go for it in the scene. It was great. It was like Jenny and George Bernard Shaw. They knew how to put on a play. Yes, they were masters of it. I was so impressed with her pulling that off. And the whole time I thought this was stupid. And it taught me a great lesson. It's not what you read in a script. It's what you can do with it. And she knew that me and her and some lion, we'd find them, would be wonderful. It was great. And after the final performance, Jenny came backstage and she said, God, you are so professional. And I said, oh, thank you. No, you didn't crack up at all tonight. I said, well, why would I? I was Androcles. I was in character. She said, yeah, but everybody in the audience was cracking up. I said, why? What do you mean they're all giggling? Were they? Yeah, well, it's a comedy. No, they were giggling at the wrong spots. Why? John, didn't you see? My boob popped out. My boob popped out on stage. I had to like shove it back in. You didn't see that? Oh, no, I never noticed. That probably told her something right there, right? Yeah. Anyway, it was wonderful. That was our sophomore year. And from that on that year, Jenny went from triumph to triumph. She was like a force of nature. She was like a cyclone in my life. But it wasn't just in my life, it was everywhere. The next show was The Little Prince, a musical. And Jenny, she played the queen of this tiny planet. And Jenny at 14 was very, very small. And she sat in this huge throne on stage, and she had this big crown on her head, and she was barely visible on this gigantic throne. And she gave out orders, but her orders were always like, yeah, you could do it. You just had to make sure that she gave the order. Like people would come to her and they'd be like, we want to start a revolution and overthrow the monarchy. And she'd say, well, you haven't asked yet. You have to ask. Oh, all right. We want to start a revolution and overthrow the monarchy. And then Jenny would say, with her big scepter, I order you to do so. And it was okay. She was great. A cyclone in my life and on stage. And then she fell in love with Brent. I mean, honestly, Brent was a junior. He was totally old. I was so annoyed. I mean, why couldn't she fall in love with me? Why couldn't I be her boyfriend? Well, I guess the fact that I never showed any interest might have something to do with it. You know, she probably figured that I wasn't really interested in girls. Remember the boob incident? Yeah. Anyway, the real problem was, and the reason I hated it, is Brent was like a nice guy. He was like kind of cute, and he was tall, and he was super friendly, and that just made it more difficult. It drove me crazy, but I got over it. I was discovering theater. I was out of that library, and I was discovering theater. I wanted to know about everything. So that year I learned about lighting. I learned about sets and set construction. I learned how to hold a hammer. You know, when I went in there, I held it like this. Now I held it like that for maximum swing. Huh. I learned about sound. Boom, boom, boom. I learned about directing. And I learned about playwriting. And I was reading Shaw. All the time I was reading Shaw. Shaw had captured me. I loved Shaw. And at the end of the year, I was in a big musical. And I had this great costume. And I was on stage like in a bathing suit and a little cap. And I said, we've got to have that certain thing called the boyfriend. And the actors in the show were so good. And there was this actress named Karina, and she played like this old French madam. And she'd been in love when she was young, and she sang the song, Fancy Forgetting the Love That We Knew. But Karina decided that every time she entered the stage or left it, she would sing that song, just like hum it. It was amazing. La 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 la. La 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 la. I didn't even know you could do that. I thought you had to do what was written on the page, right? And I realized again that a script isn't what's on the page, it's what you bring to it. And you can bring anything to it if it makes sense on stage. It was such a great thing. And regardless of Brent, Jenny was always there, always inspiring me. One thing that really inspired me that she always did was she was always reading. And something my father did. I think she read almost as much as my father. She was always reading a book. And that's when I started picking up George Bernard Shaw and reading him. And I loved everything he wrote. I loved even the prefaces to his plays. They were so interesting. And he said something that was devastating to me. He said that school is a waste of time. Nobody should go to the university. And everybody at my school was supposed to go to the university. That's what our school was there for. But he said, no, school's dumb. He said his high school was dumb. And that's when I discovered skepticism, because he was the most skeptical person of all time. And I became skeptical about him because I thought if I hadn't come to high school, I wouldn't have met Jenny. I wouldn't have been in a musical. I wouldn't have been in a toga. I wouldn't have danced with a lion. I wouldn't have had any friends. So even I became skeptical of George Bernard Shaw, who was the most skeptical person of all. Well, that summer, Brent broke it off with Jenny. Yeah, it was really sad. He ended it. I told him once I thought it maybe was because she was too clingy. She was always like holding him. I said, you're like his barnacle, he's like a rock and you're just like stuck to him all the time, stuck to him. And, he's a junior. He doesn't want to get married yet. Maybe when he's a senior, he'll want to marry you. But I said, yeah, maybe you were too much of a barnacleism. I felt bad because she was so sad that summer. So I decided to ride up the hill to her house. She lived at the top of the hill in Larkspur on my bike to visit her. Oh my God. That hill. It was a killer. It was murder. But when I got to her house, it was like weird. It was a house like none I'd ever seen before. It was fascinating. You see, my parents' house was great. It was huge. It was like this colonial house with these big columns, really show-offy. They were such show-offs. And people used to drive up the lane, they'd be like, wow, impressed. But when you went inside, it was just a house. You were just inside a house. But her house was amazing. You see, her father was an architect and he'd actually designed it himself. And it was on this beautiful ivy-covered slope. And you crossed a bridge. It had its own bridge to get into it. And you walked inside and, oh my God. Every wall was a floor-to-ceiling window. It was all windows. It was a grand modernist masterpiece. It was incredible. And those beautiful views out over Larkspur, cypress trees, Monterey pines, redwoods glistening in the rainfall, and off in the distance, little rolling hills. It was magic in there. And the best part about her house was Jenny and her parents. They were like no other parents I ever met. She had a brother, but I never saw him. I mean, he was like this tall, handsome guy who was older than us, but he was never around, but they always were. Every time I went over there, her parents were there and they were so sweet. They'd always say, John, come talk to us. Come on. My parents were totally friendly and their friends were totally friendly. But with them, it was always like, so where do you want to go to college? Good school, but Harvard's better. That's how they talked. But Jenny's parents like, come talk to us. And her mother reminded me of Diane Keaton and her father of Tony Randall, except with glasses. And they were always taking the piss out of me. I mean, they always thought I was like full of it, but in a friendly way. They're always like kind of teasing me about my things. So I'd go in and I'd talk to them. And I sat down and they'd be like, John, so what do you think of President Carter? Oh, he's stupid. I hate President Carter. The Tehran hostage crisis, he doesn't do anything with those guys. He's so stupid. And he sent those helicopters to get them out, and the helicopters all crashed. What an idiot. Oh, John. So did you like President Nixon? Oh, yeah, Nixon was great. I love Nixon. Nixon was like a liar and a cheat and a criminal and a crook, but he was a really good president. I really admire that. John, when Jenny was a little girl, just almost a baby, she used to be in a backpack on our backs and we marched against the Vietnam War. Yeah. Oh, protesting wars is so stupid. I mean, what's the Army for? I mean, that was dumb. We should have won that war. We should keep fighting it. We should go back and fight it some more. So what are you doing this summer, John? Well, I'm taking theater classes at the Belrose Theater in San Rafael, the Belrose Theater School. And I'm studying ballet and tap and acting and singing. Oh, can you sing a song for us, John? Oh, yeah, I can sing this. Oh, this is a good song. Okay. Rihanna rings like a bell through the night, and wouldn't you love to love her? And they all laughed. They thought I was a big old ham. And then they said, dance for us, John, dance. I said, oh, okay. I can do a shuffle off to Buffalo. That's probably my best thing, but I can only go one direction to the left. This is a shuffle off to Buffalo. I need a stick and proper dance shoes, but this is it. I spent so many wonderful afternoons hanging out with her parents. They were so smart and creative. They talked about movies and theater, and they just loved talking to Jenny and me. It wasn't like they were her parents. It was more like her brother and sister. That fall, we were back at school and we were juniors, and Jenny and I did this really evil ass play called Monkey's Paw. This thing is nasty. And we played this middle-aged English couple. Yeah, we were always like married, this older couple, that was us. And we had a son named Herbert, who we loved. He meant everything to us. He worked in a factory. He was 19. And what we wanted most in the world was to buy our house. We only owed £200 on the mortgage. If we could pay that off, we would own our house. And a friend of ours came over, and he had with him a monkey's paw. And he said, "Do you want this? It'll give you 3 wishes. If you wish on it, 3 wishes." And Jenny said, "Yes, of course. We'd love it. Please give it to us." And he said, "Be careful." The last person who had this, their final wish was they wished to die. So we took the monkey's paw and we wished for £200 to pay off our house. Nothing happened. Next morning, our son Herbert went off to work, and we were at home, and at 5 o'clock, somebody knocked on the door. We opened the door. It was a man from Herbert's factory. "Hello. I'm afraid there's been an accident. Your son fell into some machinery at the factory. He didn't suffer." And Jenny said, "Oh, thank goodness." What? No, he didn't suffer at all. It was quick. The company wanted you to have some compensation. Of course, the company is not liable, but we did want you to have this small sum of money, which we know could never be enough. It's £200 for you. I'm so sorry." So next morning, I went down to identify my son's body. And when I came home, my wife was crying. She said, "Where's the monkey's paw? Give me the monkey's paw." I said, "No, why would you want the monkey's paw? It's evil. You know that now. I want him back. I want Herbert back. I want him back." And I pulled the monkey's paw out of my pocket, and she grabbed it from me and said, "No, no, no, don't. Don't, my darling. I just saw Herbert. He's horribly mangled. I couldn't even recognize him except for the clothing. That was the only way I could identify him. You don't want him back. Don't pray for him back. He'll come back mangled." She held the monkey's paw and she prayed for her son to be returned to her. Prayed. "I wish for his return. I wish for his return." And then we heard crunching footsteps outside the house. It was him. He was coming back. And then all of a sudden there was a knock on the door. And my wife ran to the door and she was undoing the locks. She was going to open the door. The knocking became more persistent as she worked the locks. She was working the locks. And I grabbed the monkey's paw and I said, "I wish for him to be dead. I wish for him to be dead and at peace." And she threw open the door. And there was nobody there. It was an empty lane. And Jenny let out a cry of horror and she collapsed on the stage. Meanwhile, every night I read more Shaw. Inspired by Jenny, watching Jenny read, I dove into my Shaw, and he wrote all the best books on all the great playwrights. He wrote the best books on Ibsen, the quintessential Ibsenite. And he wrote the best book on Chekhov. It was his own play, Heartbreak House, a tribute to Chekhov with a great preface about how great Chekhov is. And he wrote the best book on Wagner. Yes, the perfect Wagnerite, which of course was George Bernard Shaw. And he wrote some great stuff about Shakespeare, and he paid Shakespeare the ultimate tribute. He wrote his own Shakespearean play. Amazing. And that inspired me to write my own Shakespearean play in sonnets, in verse. And Shakespeare was great for me to perform because that was the one part of my body that was developed. My thighs, they were like really chunky, and my calves were pretty good too. So I would look great in tights. And I wrote my own Shakespeare play. It was so much fun. And then Jenny did something absolutely amazing. She created the best thing that I'd seen so far. It was a musical, and it was called Cinderella. It was based on the fable Cinderella. And it was amazing what she came up with. First of all, she got all of us in the show to write one scene each, right? So I got to write a scene. It was the first thing I'd ever written. She empowered me. I was playing the Duke and I got to write a scene. Also, it was 90 minutes long. It had songs. And oh, this was great. It had animals. It had animals in it. So there was like a cat. The actress who played the cat was great. And she was always chasing this mouse. And so the cat was like, and licking and scratching. It was great. It was just amazing. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And the mouse that she was chasing, it was like this little kind of spark plug kid, right? He was really kind of tough and he had whiskers and he was always like running like a little spark plug mouse, right? And his name was Danny Daniels, right? And I'll get back to him later, Danny Daniels. He'll come up later. But the show was wonderful. And she cast these really beautiful actors, Spike and Carol as the prince and Cinderella. It was incredible, this production. I loved it. And the set was great. This kid, Jamie, designed this beautiful set. It actually rotated. It started out in the house where she lived with her evil stepsisters. The stepsisters were so evil. She lived with the evil stepsisters, and then it spun and became the palace. And then it spun back to the house. It was so gorgeous. It was such a wonderful production. I was so impressed with Jenny. She had like taken in all that George Bernard Shaw stuff, right? Keep it short, keep it moving. Have animals because the audience loves animals. Have an allegory, right? Social justice, always fight for equality and social justice. It was an inspiring production. And that year I didn't have enough of dressing up on stage. I wanted to dress up more. So I started raiding my father's closet, right? And he had all this amazing stuff in his dressing room. I actually discovered in there an ascot. When on earth did my father ever wear an ascot? That was like for country gentlemen. He was like a Marin County gentleman. He was like a San Francisco attorney. He never wore an ascot. It was much too fruity-tooty for him. So I just stole it. And then my parents brought me back a red cardigan sweater from the Newport Yacht Club. They went down to LA for the weekend and they brought me back this sweater. I love this because I knew that if I wore it, anytime I walked in the room, everybody would notice John. My mother once asked me years later when I knew I was gay. And I told her, well, when you gave me the red cardigan sweater from the Newport Yacht Club, I told her, I thought you were trying to make me gay. I thought that was the purpose. I also wore my hat from that musical. Yes. Oh, I dressed for school every day. And then I discovered in my father's closet the most amazing thing. I didn't even know what they were called. I just found them in his closet. They were just sitting there. And I asked everybody, what's this? What's this? And one person said, oh, it looks like a tennis shoe. I said, no, but it's like a dress shoe. And another person said, oh, I think that's called a saddle shoe. I think you're wearing a saddle shoe. And I said, no, I don't think that's the name for it. You know who knew? Jenny's mom. She'd worked in the opera, at the opera house in the costume shop. She said what I was wearing were spectators. Da 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 da. And that's how I went to class. I couldn't even believe it. Always go to, sort of an affluent high school. You get teased a lot less for being like, this is how I went to class. It was as if I was going to play golf, All right, let's tee up. Here we go. Up, four, caddy, bring my clubs. Off we go. Tee after the 8th hole, I think. It was so much fun. And that spring arrived, the best spring ever. I had friends, I was having fun, I was dressing up, I was full. That spring, we did this great play, Arsenic and Old Lace. And Jenny was wonderful in that. She played Aunt Abby, this old woman. And her performance wasn't condescending. She was very friendly. She didn't act all frail. And she was always serving people tea. And the tea had arsenic in it. Have some tea. And then she'd watch them die. Oh, she was so great at the Black comedy. And I played her nephew, Jonathan Brewster. Jonathan Brewster, who's convinced that he is Teddy Roosevelt, charging up San Juan Hill in the War of 1898. Charge! Charge the blockhouse! Fire! Charge! I was charging all over the stage all evening. Wow, it was so much fun. And that year, Jenny was in the first flower of her adulthood. She was such an inspiration to me, and not like as a director. She was an inspiration as an example. Everything she did inspired me. That spring, when I was enjoying spring, loving spring, she started working. Yeah, in a bookstore, which was perfect. And I went in one day and she was sitting there behind the counter reading a book, and she put it down and she said, "Can I help you, sir?" She was such an inspiration to me. Wonderful. And I did musicals that spring and that summer. I was like dancing and singing all summer long. I had the best time. And then we started into our senior year. And I still dressed like I was on the golf links, off to play golf, like somebody from a Chiva story, but happy about it. And Jennifer was still sad. I couldn't figure out what it was. I mean, it'd been a year since Brent. We never discussed it. There was just like this tristesse about her, not explained. But we were so close then, so close to each other. And, I became her rock. She would barnacle me. She was always like holding me, like holding on to me and putting her head on my shoulder or taking my hand. And at first I was such a baby. I treated her like my mother. I was like, "Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me." And then I just decided, well, why not? If it makes her happy. But I think really it made me happy. And I just like being held. And there was nothing between us. And we didn't even wonder about that. It's just the way we were with each other. And then in our senior year, Jenny was cast. She was cast in the play that would be the culmination of her acting career, an incredible role for her in Night Must Fall. She was an ingenue. Finally, she plays somebody her own age, somebody kind of like Jenny. And I was her paramour. We no longer were an old married couple. We were a couple that was falling in love. But it was a very interesting play because Jenny, she was playing somebody in her 20s, an English girl who wanted love, wanted romance, was desperate for something exciting to happen to her. And I played a cockney lad. And I was interested in her. Olivia was her name. My name was Dan. But I was interested in her for a bit of fun. I wasn't serious. And the other thing about me was, though nobody knew it, I was a psychopathic murderer. And we were so excited because here we had two fat roles, a romantic play in kind of a thick way, right? Because I was like killing people. Well, we were so excited about this project. We got the scripts, I rushed home, I read it, and I was so bored. I thought that play was so boring. I was like so depressed. I was like, this is my big play? Wow, this is nothing. I forgot the number one lesson of theater, what I'd learned in Androcles, what I'd learned from Karena, watching her go across the stage, and Cinderella, all of these things. It's not what's in the script, it's what you can do with it. It's what you can bring to it. It's the extras, it's the roar, rah, it's the dancing, la, 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 la. It's the animals, it's the joy, it's the fun that you bring to it as an actor. I forgot that. I forgot that as we went into the rehearsal process. My big scene, it was such a great scene. I killed two women, mutilated their bodies. I was on stage cleaning up this house after this grisly murder, and Jenny came on stage. And I realized that I have to kill her because she knew too much. But that also liberated me because I said to her, wow, that was my big chance. I can tell you all about myself, can't I? I'm sick of hearing about how everybody's so clever all the time. I'm sick of it. I want to talk about how clever I am for a change. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for opening night. I was forever getting off book, learning my lines. I had no energy in rehearsal, no imagination, no creativity. And the director didn't do anything. He didn't drill me on my lines. He didn't yell at me. And Jenny just looked at me like she was disappointed. She always looked so disappointed in me. She'd never looked that way before. And it wasn't their fault. It wasn't their responsibility to get me, an actor who'd done all these plays, to give a good performance. But what could I do? It was spring. I had my driver's license. I didn't want to study my script. I didn't want to worry about rehearsal. I wanted to drive the car around Marin and listen to old musicals and visit my friends. Consequently, the show opened and I wasn't ready. Jenny's big scene was when I read from a newspaper. And I was like barely literate. I could just barely read the newspaper, and I was reading this catalog of horrible things that this murderer had done. And nobody on stage, the whole cast was on stage, none of them knew who the murderer was except Jenny. She knew it was me. As I read these things, she was horrified by what I was reading, but also, and this is what was so great about this acting challenge, she was excited by it. She was becoming excited by how adventurous this guy was that she'd fallen in love with. It was like a great moment for her to stand there and hear me read this stuff from the newspaper. And I read, the murderer committed the crime in the forest, most likely stripped naked before and cleaning himself afterwards in the forest lake. He buried the body shallow in an open pit, cunningly chancing it being filled, which it was. It was the next day, the 11th. The body was nude. Attempt had been made to turn to foot of next column. Attempt had been made to eradicate fingerprints with a knife. The head was severed by a skilled person, possibly a butcher. The murderer. As I read that speech in rehearsal, Jenny went through a whole series of emotions. I sounded so uneducated, but also clearly I'd done these horrifying things to this body, and I'd done them while I was naked. She was getting aroused. She was getting horrified. It was a great scene. And on opening night, I had not memorized it. So I wrote it down on a newspaper, right? I wrote all my lines on the newspaper, and I told the stage manager, make sure this is the newspaper that's put on the couch, because that's what I have to get when I read the paper. And I went out there, and the newspaper on the couch was blank. It had nothing on it. They'd sent out the wrong newspaper. And I had to improvise that speech because I never learned it. A body was found. It was dead. The body was buried. The killer is loose. I didn't give her any of the stuff she needed. The stuff about me being naked when I did it, about me cutting the head off, the fingers off, nothing. She had nothing to work with. Everybody on that stage was terrified. I could feel it. The whole cast was up there. They were all my friends. I loved every single one of them. And they were terrified of what was happening. And I could just feel it. They didn't know if I'd be able to go on. They didn't know if I'd be able to make it through. But I did. We kept going. And something else happened, and it was almost worse. The old woman who I was working for, who was going to be my next victim, right? She was sitting on this stage in her wheelchair eating chocolates, and it was late at night. It was dark. And there was a curtain in the middle of the stage that led to the hallway. And I snuck back into the house. The audience didn't see this, and I got behind the curtain. And when my cue came, I yanked the curtain open, and the audience screamed at the top of their lungs, "Ah!" And then everybody laughed because they thought it was so funny that they'd been so frightened by me. And I realized in that moment that the whole play could have been like that. It could have all been that terrifying. It could have been like this horrifying psychological thriller if I just learned my lines and committed and made it exciting for them. After the show, Jenny was mad at me. God, that hurt. The student I most admired in the world, probably the person I most admired at that point, she was so mad at me, so disappointed. I went home and I learned the speech, and the rest of the performances, I did it right. And she got her great moment on stage. You know, she was there at my first performance of a play. Yeah, Androcles and the Lion. And she made it happen. She had put me on stage. She forced me up there and made it happen and made me act. And there I was at her final performance in high school, and I had ruined it completely. Her last show. Well, Night Must Fall wasn't my last show. I was cast as the lead in the Big Spring musical. Oh, it was great. I love that show. I loved it, but you know, that's not fair because that show didn't need my love. It was a musical. It had all those great songs and all that dancing, it had all those great short scenes with all that comedy. It didn't need our love. Plays need our love. Complicated plays need more love. The more complicated the play, the more love it needs. And my love was wasted. Jenny's parents came and saw the show, and they were so great. They were always so great when they came backstage. They were like, John, that was so much fun. That was wonderful. We really enjoyed that, didn't we? Oh, that was so cute seeing you up there singing and dancing like you studied. Yeah. Now, we were trying to figure out, are you a ham or are you a show off? What do you think he is, ham or show off? I think he's a show off. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's a show ham off. That's what I think. They always took the piss out of me. They always brought me down a notch, but that was okay. They were like my buds, right? They were just my buddies backstage. And during the rehearsal for that show, one night, late at night, I decided I had to do something. So when rehearsal was over, I went out and I got on my bike because I figured this has to be done on a bike because I think the car had messed me up and taken me too far away from my responsibilities. I had to get back to the bike. So I got on my bike and I rode up Jenny's Hill, that steep hill in the middle of the night. It was so steep, that hill. And when I got there, I was panting, but I was really quiet. And I snuck down into the ivy on the hill below her house, right beside that little bridge that led to the front door. And I picked up some pebbles and I saw Jenny up there in the house walking around. And I threw the pebbles up and I went, Jenny, Jenny. And she came to the window. She said, what are you doing down there? What are you crazy? You're gonna get me in trouble. Jenny, will you come to the senior ball with me? Will you be my date? Of course I will. You're crazy. You're just crazy. Great. I'm happy. I'm excited. Yay. Shh, be quiet. You're going to get me in trouble. You're not supposed to be here so late at night. Go home. Go home. Parting is such sweet sorrow. Good night. Well, she told everybody on campus about that. Every single person. The pitcher of the baseball team came up to me in the hall and he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, that was good. Good work. Very, very classy. I was so excited about the senior ball. It was going to be so much fun. And I wanted to wear a very special outfit. You know, I really wanted to dress up. I didn't want to be all like crazy show-offy though. You know, I wanted to wear something that was like, you know, like classy, like good, right? And as we were getting ready, Jenny and I got even closer. We talked a lot about things we never talked about before. And she told me why she was so sad about things. It turns out her brother, he was adopted. He was an adopted boy. She told me about the day that her parents went to pick him up. She was 5 years old. She said they went to pick him up, and he was just like a few months older than her. And when they got him, this little boy, he just clung to her hand and he wouldn't let it go. He gripped it so hard. And she said from that moment forward, she was in love with him. She thought he was the most wonderful little boy ever. And the whole time he was growing up, she just adored him. And she always used to say to me, I think he's so handsome. He's such a good guy. But you know, he never fit in. He didn't do well in school. Her father was a scoutmaster and he didn't do well in scouts. He never fit into anything. And then when he got to high school, he got involved with kind of the wrong people. He started smoking marijuana. Yeah, and now marijuana is cool and it's fine, it doesn't matter. But then it was like a big deal. It was like a crime, right? And it kind of kept shoving him more and more on the outside, more and more away from everything. And he became more and more alienated. He started to stay away. And he wasn't going off to college. Like everybody else at our school, he wasn't going to go to college. And her parents were devastated by that because, like Jenny, they adored him. They thought he was like a prize sent from heaven, their responsibility. He enlisted in the army, which at the time was considered like this bad thing, like a letdown. But that was the one time where I was actually encouraging to them. I actually said to them, I said, imagine if you weren't here. You probably wouldn't have even done that. It's a good thing. See it as a good thing. It could be a career. Her family were going through that the whole time we were putting on these plays. And that's why she was so sad. I put together my outfit and I found in my father's closet a bunch of jewelry. And there was like this little castle. And I thought, oh, I'm going to wear some jewelry. My first bit of jewelry. I'll wear this little castle on my tuxedo. Great. It's wonderful. And I showed up to pick up Jenny, to take her out to dinner and then to the ball. And I walked in and Jenny's mom said, oh, you look so handsome. Come look at him. Come look at him. Come over here and look at him. And Jenny's father came over and said, oh, what's that? Oh, you're wearing an Army Corps of Engineer badge. Look at that. How creative. Oh, Jenny, he's wearing an Army Corps of Engineer badge. What? Where'd you come up with that idea? Army Corps of Engineer. So stupid. I had no idea it was Army Corps of Engineer. I actually think I did, but I thought nobody else is going to know this except me. I think that cured me of my jewelry craze. Thank God. My husband would kill me if I wore jewelry. I still think it's kind of cute, isn't it? It's like a castle and it's all gold. We went out to dinner and Jenny looked so beautiful. She's wearing a dress that she and her mother had made. She looked great. I was so proud to have her as my date. And we had a nice dinner. And then we got to the design center, right? And we ended up in the middle of that huge circle. I don't know how it happened. The music was playing and suddenly everybody formed a big circle dancing. And for some reason, Jenny, the big old ham, the two of us and I went into the center of the circle and started dancing. And it was like totally naughty. It was like this raunchy dancing. I don't know where this came from. It was crazy. And there we were at the design center for my senior ball. The end of the best 4 years of my life up till then. Yeah! With Jenny, because of Jenny, she made it happen. And then, you know, we were flying and the ball was over. We had our picture taken and we thought, well, let's go hang out. We'll go to a party. And I kind of had this idea that, you know, I should do something romantic. You know, it was like, I mean, all this time spent together and I like never made a move on her. And I thought, well, you should make a move. And I was like, I didn't even know what a move was. I mean, I'd heard the word, right? I didn't even know where to begin. It was so stupid. So I don't know. We went to this party and we ended up on a bed. But not her and me. It was like her, me, and like 10 other people on this bed. And it wasn't even like sexual. It was just like this big pile of teenagers in tuxedos and ball gowns on a bed. It's like, what? And nobody was even groping each other. It was just like a pile of people. And we were all singing like pop songs, like the Ramones and Kiss. I mean, I hated that music. It was the weirdest party. And then I drove Jenny home, and we drove up to her house, and I thought, oh, okay, you should do something. I mean, that's part of like a date, right? I mean, you don't really do this stuff, but so you should do something. This is your senior ball. You should do something. It's just like, okay, so it's time to do something. And and I dropped it off, and she leaned over and she gave me a big kiss on the cheek, and she clung to me like a barnacle, put her head on my shoulder, and then she just got out of the car. And I quickly hustled out of the car and held the door for her and walked her to the front door. And she gave me another kiss on the cheek and she went inside. I thought, wow, she's happy. I wouldn't know what to do anyway. And that was the end of my last big night with Jenny. And I'm sure George Bernard Shaw would think that we were hopelessly bourgeois, right? But it was wonderful. It's like one of those silly things about high school, which obviously he didn't get growing up in Dublin. It just kind of works. I don't know how. Jenny and I stayed in touch through college. Occasionally we get together. And she came back from college and we both graduated and we were just sort of hanging out. And she told me that she'd had a 2-year relationship with Danny Daniels, the mouse, the little mouse that was always getting chased, in that play. And I was like, Danny Daniels? It was like Brent all over again. I was like, Danny Daniels? He was like a senior. He was like too old for you. I was like, really? And it was totally annoying because I totally liked him. He was like a bud of mine. Actually, that just made it worse. I was always jealous of her. I don't know why. It was incredible. A few years ago, she showed up at a play of mine, she and her husband, and they had with them the most beautiful daughter. I couldn't believe it. She was so sophisticated. She was exactly the age of me and Jenny when we left high school. And she was off to college. And she sat there in the audience drinking a beer at 18. And I said, I'm the steward of this theater. This is illegal. And they all laughed. Her father is European, so it was okay. I was so impressed. Jenny, she made it happen. And I thought about her and George Bernard Shaw and about social justice and the things that she always believed in, believed that you should put on stage, turn into fables. And, Shaw is such an interesting character, because of course he was like this big liberal, right? And all of my idols were liberals, like Bertolt Brecht and Tony Kushner, but they also had money. They were like liberals with money, right? Like Tony Kushner has a condo and Bertolt Brecht was in East Berlin, but he had a whole bunch of money in Switzerland. And George Bernard Shaw lived with his mother until he was 29. So I always thought, well, you can admire these people, but take them with an ounce of skepticism, right? Because you never know. It's weird to read his stuff now. It doesn't sound cynical, but it sounds very, very skeptical about everything. But I think he's still arguing the same things that we're all arguing. And Jenny always believed that stuff. Marching against wars, helping people, right? And reading. She was the big reader. That might be the greatest thing she ever gave to me. Quite aside from getting my butt up off of that library, getting me out of myself, turning me into a little social butterfly who couldn't stop dressing up, going on stage. She gave me a love of reading. And reading's unique. It's something that fewer people share with you than anything else, because everybody can watch a movie, everybody can watch TV, everybody can listen to music. But if you read a book that you like, there are probably not that many people in the world that are reading it. It gives you a unique perspective. You can say all sorts of witty things from that book and people will think that you made them up, right? That's the best thing about being in a Shaw play. You can drop quotes all over the place and people think you're just really clever. It wouldn't have been high school for me without Jenny. She made it happen. From togas to her boob falling out, to dancing in the center of a huge circle with all the high school seniors cheering for us. How did that happen? From the kid who was sitting in the library alone, looking at pictures. It happened because of Jenny. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm John Fisher, and this has been Jenny. And we have a bunch of programs coming up here at Theater Rhinoceros. We have a reading coming up in April. We have a benefit coming up on April 2nd. It's free, but we're hoping you come and enjoy yourself so much that you help us out with a donation. So join us for that. And I have my next essential service project next week called The Farm. So join me for that Thursday at about 8:20. And tonight's was my 52nd, which is great for me, but it means that we've been sheltering in place, dealing with this pandemic for 52 weeks. It's been a year. Can you believe it? So thank you so much for joining me for this piece. It was both a joy to create and kind of horrifying at times, because I'm not sure I could ever live up to the idea I have of Jenny. But I really appreciate you being here to watch it. If you'd like to support this program or any of our programs, you can make a donation to Theater Rhinoceros. There's my COVID-19 Theater Rhinoceros address, John Fisher, Theater Rhinoceros, 91 Central Avenue, number 102, San Francisco, California, 94117. Or you can go on our website, therhino.org, therhino.org, and make a donation there through PayPal. So many of you have been so generous through all of this, and we really appreciate it. And we're committed to putting on free stuff because we know how weird this whole live thing is. But your donations are always just like the most joyous thing, right? And so thank you. Thank you so much for making that possible. And thanks again for being here tonight. My 52nd about one of my favorite people. Good night.